Today we're talking about even more twisty thrillers. Hi, hello, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Alex, and today is like the fourth installment on the Twisty Thrillers series. So, if you're new here, the Twisty Thrillers or like best twist thrillers list is a list of thrillers that I compiled that I still think about. Now, were they the best thrillers I ever read? No. Some of them are like 3-star books because maybe they had major issues that I just didn't vibe with or whatever. But if they're on this list, it means that they had some of the best twists that I've read, and I can't stop thinking about it. Like, some of these books that I'm going to share with you today are from the archives, okay? Like, I read them so long ago. I still think about these books. I still think about them. And that to me means that it was a good thriller. Like, maybe I didn't like it that much, but like the twist was good. If I was still thinking about it all this time later, it's worth mentioning, okay? Before we get into it, make sure you hit all the buttons down below so you know when I'm posting. I post every week, and all we do on this channel is talk about books. So if you like listening to people talk about books, here I am every week doing just that for you. Like I said, all of these are from the archives this week. Like, I had to go back and reread the synopsises or the premises and everything because it's been so long. But the second I saw the title, I was like, oh my gosh, this book. So yeah, this is an exciting one for me because I love talking about books that I read like a long time ago, like that excitement I still feel about them and how much I still enjoyed them even though it was so long ago. I feel like this list and the most interesting list both kind of like have that feel of some of these I read so long ago, but I still think about it all the time. That to me means that the book has a nice longevity to it, you know, like a stick with you quality. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. The first book I'm going to talk about today is Are You Sleeping by Kathleen Barber. Okay, I read this so long ago. Again, this was a book club book. Okay, and this was probably one of the earlier ones that we read. And I remember thinking, this has a lot of high points in it for me. This has a lot of things that I like in it. And it was so exciting. Like, I don't know, the whole idea of it, how they put it together, how Kathleen Barber decided to lay these pieces out to me was just so creative. Okay, so let's get into the premise. So we have this woman, I can't remember her name, I'm sorry, but she's married, she has a life and all of these things, right? But she has like been keeping almost all of her past away from her husband. When she was younger, her father died, like was murdered, and it was a really big deal, right? Like huge murder trial type thing. And so basically as she grew up, she estranged herself from her twin sister and her mother and basically started a whole new life, one that didn't include her life before, because like I said, this was like a really popular famous thing, and she didn't want to be associated with her father's death anymore. She didn't want to be associated with her twin sister anymore, and her mother, after her dad died, ran off and joined a cult. So she didn't want to be associated with her either. Like, she wanted a blank slate. She wanted to start again. She wanted to be her own person, right? The anonymity the anonymity of being just a normal person with no drama attached to you is so appealing to her that she literally started over. So now, years after all this has happened, her mother dies in the cult, and she like has to go home and like face the music, right? She has to go home and deal with all the stuff that happens after your parent and loved one dies. This is like coming up, like her mother dies. This reporter is deciding to dredge up her father's murder again through a podcast style interview, and starts doing these episodes about this family, and eventually works herself into this woman's life and is able to start interviewing her about what happened to her father, what happened to her mother, and then her twin sister comes back in the scene too. It's crazy. It's crazy. It has so many things in it though that just really like got me. Like this whole thing of her leaving her life behind was so interesting to me, and then her having to like come back to it. And not only is she just like coming back to it, she has like a whole life, like a whole family that didn't know any of this was real. And so they're getting bombarded with this whole thing of like, "Oh, you had a whole different life and you didn't tell us." You had a whole different life and you didn't tell your spouse that you had a whole different life. Like, so there's this really interesting dynamic there. And then the whole dynamic between these two twin sisters is just immaculate. Like, it's incredibly deceptive and creepy and beautiful. Like, it is just this strangest mixture. And I think Kathleen Barber really nailed it there. And then you have this additive of all of this like publicity that's happening at the time of the death, at the time that she's had to go back home, and like with the blog like picking up and this woman trying to interview their family about their father's murder. It's just so much happening at once. I cannot tell you at any point in the book did I know what was going to happen. There were some points in the book where I'm like, where are we even going? I didn't know, but I was there. I was along for the ride, because let me tell you, I couldn't stop reading if I wanted to. I could not stop reading if I wanted to. This was not a 5-star book for me. It did have some issues, but I couldn't put it down. I couldn't look away. It was like a beautiful train wreck the whole time. And the ending, like I said, I still think about this book. I still think about this book a lot. I might reread it. Because it's been so long now that it's like it would probably still shake me a little bit. It's been so long now. This would probably still mess with me. This one I highly recommend. I need to look more into Kathleen Barber. Like, this is one of those books that just like I think about every now and then I don't think about it. But I think I need to look into Kathleen Barber again. This one was definitely like, check this one out. The next book I'm going to talk about is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. Now, here's the thing. Is this a thriller? I don't know. I don't know. Does this have a really good twist? Yes. Yes. Okay. I can't put it any other way. Yes, it has a perfect like twist at the end that I don't know. I didn't see it. Like, and I feel like everyone's read this book by now. This was like on Reese's book club or whatever. I feel like everyone's read this book now. This was another one that we did. No, did we do it for book club? I don't think so. I think I just read it like for myself. So, premise. We have this like little community that's like very HOA, right? Very WASP neighborhood. And then this woman and her daughter, this woman that's like a artist, and her daughter move into this like very cookie cutter neighborhood, and they sort of like shake everything up, you know, with their eccentricities and like, oh, you're a single mom. It's like, I don't know. I think the reason this resonates with me a lot is like I knew a lot of neighborhoods like this when I was growing up, and it was very like when something new would happen in these neighborhoods, it would literally be like the talk of the neighborhood for weeks. And this is exactly what's happening with this family. Is like she kind of moves in there and they're all just like gossiping about her, and they're like, oh, how interesting. Like, because she's a single mom and she's an artist and not have a high powered career or like a stay-at-home mom or something like that, or a husband. Anyway, the whole dynamic of that was like really interesting. So they move into this like little cookie cutter neighborhood, and it's like everyone kind of wants to be her friend, but the person who wants to be her friend the most is kind of like the head hen of the neighborhood, right? And she basically becomes obsessed with this woman and finding out why she's there, where she came from, her whole story. And as all this is happening, there is a family in their little neighborhood that's trying to adopt a Chinese American baby. And basically, this artistic single mom sort of like wedges her way in there. And this thing like blows up, like national media attention. It goes to court. things like that. And these two women, you know, the head hen and the artistic single mom, end up on two different sides of this coin, of this battle, right? Of this public opinion about what's happening in their community. And it turns into something that's just so unhinged and unexpected. And then, as this woman is digging into this single mom, because she just can't, she's obsessed with her. Like, there's no other way to put it. She's just digging away at her life. She uncovers, like, everything that this woman is trying to hide. And it's wild. It is wild from start to finish. I don't know. This is one of the ones now, like, okay, I really hate these like over publicized or popularized book clubs, like Oprah's book club, Reese's book club, because there are some allegations out there about like what happens to books when they get into these very exclusive clubs, like what happens to the authors and things like that. And so I won't talk about that very much here. You can look into it if you want to. So I don't typically like to support things that happen in these book clubs, or usually they're so overpopularized that I don't end up liking them anyway. This one, oh my gosh. Wow. Okay, first of all, the amount of conversations that are in this book are just really flawless. Like, you know, this whole issue with the Chinese American baby trying to get adopted, like there's so many beautiful conversations that are happening there, so much awareness that's happening there that I think that people typically really overlook. I really enjoyed that we were having a conversation about it and it wasn't just swept under the rug. Like Celeste Ng was very selective and made a lot of very deliberate choices when she wrote this book, and this is one of them. And the way that she intricately layered this book so that I didn't know what was coming at all. This has also been turned into a film. I haven't watched the film. I'll be completely honest. I haven't watched the film. But it's definitely one that I've been thinking about watching. But I liked the book so much that I feel like the movie just won't live up to it. Again, I don't know that this was a thriller. I don't know. But I couldn't describe it any other way because it was thrilling when I was reading it, and there was just such a magnificent twist at the end that I really wouldn't push it into any other category. So yeah, do with that information what you will, whether you think it's a thriller or not. I think the twist at the end is worth investigating, and like I said, lots of really good conversations are happening in this book, and lots of really good and deliberate moments from Celeste Ng here. I have not read any more Celeste Ng since I read this book. And you see, my TBR is just going to get bigger now. I keep meaning to go back to them, but we'll see. Yes, little fires everywhere. If you have not read this, and if you've not watched the movie, if you've not read it and you've not watched the film, I would implore you to read it. Okay, this is the last one. The Secret Life of CeeCee Wilkes by Diane Chamberlain. Oh, crazy thing. This was not even on the thrillers list. This was not even on there. And as I was looking through the list, I was like, what about this book? I think about this book all the time. I think about it all the freaking time. And I don't know how I didn't end up on the thrillers list, but like I couldn't remember who wrote it. So I'm sitting there like trying to dig for it and look for it. And I'm like, how did this not make it on the list? So here it is. Here it is, because this deserves to be on the list so much. Again, is this a thriller? I don't know. It has all of the like building blocks to be a thriller, and so I can't see how it's not. But also I don't know. I don't know what you would call it. In the 70s, CeeCee Wilkes witnessed a murder. And for 20 years, she maintained that it was this specific guy that did it. He's been in prison this whole time. And CeeCee Wilkes went on and built up her life with her child and her family and everything. And now this guy's up for death row, right? Just as he's about to start like his death row final stages, you know, like he's run out of appeals, things like that. A body is found. And it is the body of the missing girl that this guy supposedly murdered. Now, when she went missing, she was very pregnant. And they looked for her for a long time. And they finally pinned the murder on him because they had so much suspicion and evidence, but they didn't have a body, right? So they found the body after all of these years, but there was no baby. There was no baby inside that woman, and there was no baby buried with that woman. And CeeCee Wilkes knows where that baby is. And so, after all of these years, she's going to have to come forward. Now that this guy is on death row and they know that he didn't do it. I can't remember quite why they're like sure that it wasn't him, but there was something in like the way that the body was found, or I think there was multiple bodies found. There was something in the way this all shook out that like he was no longer a person of interest, and like so now his whole thing was going back to trial to try to get him like out of prison for good. And CeeCee gets dragged into this because she knows what happens because she was with him. She testified against him. And now she has to come clean about everything that happened. And she has to tell them where the baby went. Okay, one of the reasons why I'll never forget this book is because look at this cover, okay? It looks so normal. And the funny thing is, my mother-in-law picked this book for me. Because she was like, doesn't it look so sweet and interesting? It was not sweet. It was interesting though. Like this hit so many high notes for me. I think that this book was so interesting. It was almost like a psychological character study. Because what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, okay, I could not even explain how devastated I felt through this entire book. There were just so many moments where I'm like, how? How did no one figure it out? How did no one know? How did no one find this woman? How did this stay buried for so long? How did this happen? How did this guy get pinned for this? But it was so much happening. Every page, there was so much happening every page. And I think the most devastating part is that CeeCee Wilkes went on and like lived a normal life while that guy sat in prison for like 20 years. And he was gonna like die. He was on death row, he was gonna die. And she was just like, if that's not thriller material, I don't know what is. Because what do you mean? You're just gonna sit there and let that guy die because you don't want to give up your secrets? That's like a whole other person. Okay, this book went so much deeper than I ever expected to. Like, it felt all very surface level when I was reading the premise, and then like as we got into it, it's just like the hole just kept getting deeper and deeper, and I was like, when is it gonna end? When are we gonna finally figure out like how it all fits and it just fit together so beautifully? It just snapped together so perfectly. I really liked this book. I could not put it down. It haunts me. It haunts me. It really does. Like I said, this wasn't on the list, but I remember it so vividly. I think I didn't put it on the list because I don't really know that it's a thriller, like I said. But it has all of the building blocks to be one. So it's here. It's here, and I think you should read it, and I think you should tell me what you think about it. Because I think about this book all the time. I really do. I get flashbacks from this book a lot. So I think that that's just good writing. I think it is just really well put together, and it was just messed up. It was messed up in a way that wasn't what I was expecting. It wasn't as intentional as I thought it was going to be, and it was still devastating. If you've read it, I feel like you would understand what I mean by that. And if you want to read it and have that discussion with me, I would love it. I would love it. This is one of those books I could sit down and just like dissect with somebody forever. I could. It was so good. Okay, I'll stop. But like, yes, look into this one too. Okay. That's all I have for you guys today. That is all the Twisty thrillers I have for you today. Like I said, I feel like 2 of them were not really thrillers, but like they meet the criteria for me. Like if it messed with my head, the twist was there, and I still think about it, it goes on this list. Okay, make sure you hit all the buttons down below so you know when I'm posting. I post every week, and yeah, I'd love to know what you're reading. I am reading a book that's really just like messing with me right now. I don't know what to think about it. I cannot wait for the April wrap up. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about what I've been reading. It's been a pretty good month, and I still have another book lined up before the month is over. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you guys about what I'm reading. Drop me a comment, let me know what you're reading, or if you've read any of the books I talked about today, and I will see you all next time. Bye!